Hello and welcome to Original Soundchat, where video game music is a work of art. On each episode, it's our goal to help you learn about 2 soundtracks from the world of games, as well as the people, stories, and critical tracks behind them. My name is DeVader.
And I'm Peter Spezia. We're brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and Rhymes with Asia. It's time to appreciate great OSTs and the games that they come from without getting too bogged down in music theory. Joe, what are this week's games?
Up first is 2003's Harvest Moon: A Wonderful Life, another entry in the iconic farming simulator franchise that sees the player able to raise a child all the way into adulthood.
Following that is the globetrotting world adventure for the Blue Blur. Except this time, he's gone and grown some Werehog claws. 2008's Sonic Unleashed. 23123 is number 1. Episode 231 for this show, Joe, and every time just think never would have gotten this far, but here we are. I guess the theme between these two games is that the day has better gameplay than the night. Makes more sense for Sonic Unleashed, but I suppose it can also work for Harvest Moon.
Yeah, you're sleeping, so there is no gameplay at night.
Ha-cha-cha!
Got it. For me, the episode number is less distressing than, what do you mean? It's almost the end of June already. What do you mean?
Yeah. How are we like halfway through the year already? That is wild to think about. Good to have you back here after a couple solo episodes, though. That was very needed on both of our ends. So if you're listening out there and found that a little mix up, really appreciate that. It's things like that that really help us continue to do the show on a weekly basis, especially as lives get busier and more chaotic. So thank you for that. Joe, how are you doing? What are you playing?
Weirdly enough, I haven't been playing a lot of games. I just today at time of recording put out a review for Harmony Follow Reverie.
Oh, nice.
I haven't finished it. I'm like maybe 3/4 of the way through it, I think. I'm over halfway. I know that. I'm in chapter 3 of 5, according to the things I can find. It's pretty good. I don't think it's going to come away being like one of my favorite games of the year, but it's pretty all right. A very interesting method of storytelling for a visual novel. I've kind of never seen anything like it before, the way that it handles it. Other than that, I don't know, I've been playing HoloCure, and I've been playing a lot of Steam demos, but honestly, not a lot of them have really stood out as like, oh man, that was awesome. So, I'll play more before the time this episode comes out, hopefully, and I guess we'll see.
I think Little Kitty Big City is one of those demos.
It is. It's on my list. I haven't gotten to it yet, though.
Yeah, I feel like that's one, like, I should probably try. It kind of caught my attention. But yeah, that should be interesting. For me, I put in some more time into Tears of the Kingdom in the middle of some Hades runs, because we're back on our Hades nonsense in this house. And I finished all the regional phenomena for Tears of the Kingdom, and I don't feel ready. Like, I still have to go stumble upon the Master Sword. Probably should do that, just as a hunch. But yeah, I just don't feel ready. Probably will explore some more before approaching endgame stuff.
I wish you luck.
Thank you. I think I'll need it. Let's talk about some composer follow-up news. We've talked about plenty of composers on this show, and it's good to see what's going on with their work, whether it's things coming back from the past, or what are they working on going into the present and future. And I feel like when it comes to headlines in the video game industry, the big news this week was a Nintendo Direct. And it was punctuated pretty early on by the surprise that Super Mario RPG is getting a remake. It comes out November 17th this year, and Yoko Shimomura, she composed the original game soundtrack, and she is involved with producing the remake soundtrack. So, couldn't be in better hands. It looks very loyal, though. It looks like there are some gameplay mix-ups that let you do a couple new things. People are like, are those limit breaks? So, I don't know, some cool stuff there, but that should be a fantastic remake soundtrack, which Square Enix is prone to do. Then there's a remaster of Pikmin 1 and 2 that are out now digitally. A physical version is coming September 22nd. Batman Arkham Trilogy showed up, because that's coming to Switch in fall 2023. Got finally word of Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 1 that is coming out October 24th. The Sonic Mania devs are working on a new game called Penny's Big Breakaway. There's platforming, there are yo-yo mechanics. It's coming out in 2024, and T. Lopes is the lead composer on it, so that should be really interesting. And then Nintendo ended the show with Super Mario Bros. Wonder. To take advantage of the big success that the movie had this year, a new 2D Mario was kind of in the rumors before leading up to this direct, and sure enough, October 20th, we'll see a new 2D Super Mario game with a new art style, some new mechanics. Mario turns into an elephant, all sorts of things.
My main takeaways here are, one, what do you mean I will not be able to tell Smash speculators that nobody knows who Gino is anymore? That makes me sad. I don't get to say that anymore. I feel like if this were 6 months ago, I would be super excited for the MGS collection to be coming to Switch. But now that I have a Steam Deck and it's coming out on PC, I don't really need it on Switch anymore.
That's true. And if anything, it's more interesting to see like the rumors of Volume 2, like someone went and inspected the site for Konami and saw like, there are data points for Metal Gear Solid 4 and Peace Walker and 5. And it's like, I'm sorry, you mean Metal Gear Solid 4 might come off the PS3 for the first time in 15 years?
That's illegal. That can't happen. I'm cautiously optimistic about Wonder. I don't like New Super Mario Brothers, and it at least looks like it is going to be different from that. And I hope it is different from that, because I've never enjoyed a New Super Mario Brothers game. Ever.
Well, Mario goes on a drug trip, so, I mean, there's that.
That's true. And otherwise, it's not mentioned, it wasn't mentioned earlier, but the WarioWare game. The Switch gets a WarioWare, a real one this time.
Oh, yeah, like a spiritual successor to Smooth Moves.
Spiritual successor to the best WarioWare game.
Yeah.
So I'm super pumped for that. I think that is going to be, I hope that is going to be a lot of fun, because Get It Together was kind of disappointing. So here's hoping.
November 3rd on that one.
Meanwhile, the Game Awards concert at the Hollywood Bowl, we mentioned it a few times. For you, it's happened. For us, it happens tomorrow. Because time is linear and we're recording on Saturday. So, yeah. But if you missed it, I believe there'll be... Did they say there'd be a VOD that you could go watch?
I'm pretty sure. Jeff Keighley likes his big productions to be out there, so I'm sure that's going to happen. He's really talking it up. A lot of performances from music that we've talked about before. Can't wait to see what Darren Korb and Ashley Barrett have cooked up with the orchestra that's going to be conducted by Lauren Balfe. So, yeah, if they do In the Blood, sold, like done.
It'll be good. It'll be good. But yeah, so if you want to watch that, it's probably somewhere. But we can't tell you where, because again, time is linear. It has not occurred yet.
Probably check the Game Awards on YouTube. That'd probably be a good way to go. And finally, Tyrion Cuthbert, attorney of the Arcane. It's the indie Ace Attorney homage that we mentioned a couple episodes ago during the Chicory episode. It released on June 23rd on PC. Get it through Steam, because its soundtrack was composed and released by Carlos Ayene, also known as Insane in the Rain Music. So, yeah, I'll take an indie Ace Attorney homage that has cool jazzy music. Sign me up. I'm interested.
It looks interesting. It's definitely wishlisted at the very least. All right. Get your scythes and your watering cans. We're going to Harvest Moon Town. Nailed it. Let's talk about Harvest Moon: A Wonderful Life, which was originally released September 12th, 2003 for the GameCube in Japan. Then Europe and North America would see GameCube releases in March of 2004. A PlayStation 2 release, a special edition with new added content, released in November of 2004 in Japan, October of 2005 in North America, and November of 2005 in Europe. It was developed by Marvelous Interactive and self-published in Japan. Everywhere else in the world it was published by Natsume, with the exception of the European PS2 port, which was published by 505 Game Street. It is the 10th game in the Harvest Moon / Story of Seasons series of farming simulators. We talked about the GBA entry, Friends of Mineral Town, on episode 113. That actually came out the same year. If you are wondering what the deal with the name is and why I gave it two names, we covered that back in episode 113, but if you did not listen to that episode or you have forgotten, here's a very quick refresher. Bokujo Monogatari is a series of farming sim RPGs made by Marvelous Interactive, and when they were first brought to the West, they were published by Natsume under the title Harvest Moon. In 2012, these two companies had a falling out. Marvelous stopped giving Natsume the license to publish the games, but Natsume still legally owned the name Harvest Moon. Therefore, the original series had to be renamed in the West to Story of Seasons, which, to be fair, is closer to its Japanese name. Meanwhile, because Natsume still owned the name, they continued to make their own farming games under the Harvest Moon title. They're still doing that. They are all considered to be quite bad. So, yeah, it's one of the more interesting stories in video games, I think. And if you want more detail in that, you should go listen to the episode where we talked about Friends of Mineral Town. So, what is Harvest Moon: A Wonderful Life? It is a farm sim where the player is given a farm and some livestock, and they must make a life using these resources. The player can plant crops, take care of animals, forage in the forest to make products that they can then sell for money. And there's also a social aspect to the game, with many people in the nearby town, particularly the various bachelorettes, the player can choose to marry. The game begins with the player being told about a farm that has been left to them by their father, and while they don't know much about farming, they decide to give running this farm a shot. The farm in question is located in Forget-Me-Not Valley, which for some reason is hyphenated all the way through all four words, even though it should be just the first three, but everywhere I saw it written, it was all four. And they are also introduced to the citizens of the nearby village. Unlike Friends of Mineral Town, which you can kinda just play into infinity, as far as I know, A Wonderful Life is actually split up into chapters and has a definitive ending. These chapters can last 1 to 3 in-game years. The longest, I think, lasts 3 years. But some chapters have a goal that must be completed, and some have events that could end the game early if they are activated. For example, the game's first chapter lasts 1 year, with the player's goal being to woo one of the village bachelorettes. There is Nami, a girl staying at the local inn, Muffy, the daughter of the local tavern owner, Celia, a helper at another family's farm, and, added in the PS2 version, Lumina, the daughter of the local rich family and an aspiring pianist. If the player does not manage to woo one of these girls and marry them by the end of the year, the game ends.
Oh.
And from there, if you do get married and then you mess up and you get divorced, the game ends. So from there, the new couple will then have a child. In the original, it could only be a son, but the PS2 version added the ability for it to be a daughter as well. And from there, how you interact with and treat the child will decide what kind of person they grow up to be, because unlike every other Harvest Moon game, where they're kind of just stuck at being a kid forever, they grow up in this game, and they choose what career they will do as an adult, with the main question being, will they choose to pursue a career all their own, or will they inherit your farm and keep it going once you've passed on? Because at the end of this game, you die. You literally live a wonderful life. So yeah, there's a beginning and an end to this one, and that's pretty much all there is to it. If you've played Stardew Valley, you have Harvest Moon to thank for that. And it's basically the same game.
if you have seen all of the farming sims that have taken over all of the game presentations as of late, you have Harvest Moon to thank.
Yeah, the 15 that released in the past hour. So, yeah, Harvest Moon was the OG. It is what inspired all of these games. So this is where I will ask, what are your experiences with, I guess, Harvest Moon in general? I probably asked that exact question for Friends of Mineral Town, but that was like 1,000 years ago, and I don't remember the answer.
Maybe. So maybe I'll give the same answer, and maybe I don't. I don't have experience playing Harvest Moon, though obviously its inspirations reach far beyond just games like Stardew Valley. I do have some experience watching Back to Nature, I think it was. Saw the PlayStation version played on PS3 through the emulation there through the PSN store. But that's about it. I feel like it's neat to see the little changes that they make through different versions. Things like, the PS2 editions of, your offspring can be a daughter. Oh, good. I'm glad we thought that one through for that version. But yeah, it's nice that A Wonderful Life can be such a wonderful life.
I have only played Friends of Mineral Town, which is why that was the one I did back in the Stone Age. And I streamed my entire time with that game, and I'll still... We've taken to, at the beginning of streams over on twitch.tv/Nintendo World Report, if you want to watch them, we have a little widget that plays clips from our streams that people have made over the years, and every once in a while a Harvest Moon clip will come up, and I don't know what the hell was happening to me during that playthrough, but some of the weirdest clips I've ever made came from it. And I do really, after looking into it, I really kind of want to try A Wonderful Life. It sounds neat. It sounds very neat, and I hope the reason we're talking about it today is because today, at time of release, a remake comes out, Story of Seasons, A Wonderful Life, for Switch, PS5, and the Xbox Series consoles, as well as PC.
Well, look at that.
And I'm looking forward to giving it a shot at some point. Maybe we'll have to see, but I hope it's good. I hope it's a good remake.
Because Marvelous has done a pretty good job, continuing on with Story of Seasons, right?
As far as I know, they don't get as good reviews as they used to. I know the Friends of Mineral Town remake was it was mostly well received, but it was also but this is definitely a remake of a Game Boy Advance game, so...
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, there's that. So we'll have to see how it goes when it's a console game that they're remaking. Who knows? So, I have a few things about A Wonderful Life, but I did not find any information on the game's development. And to be perfectly honest, I'm not surprised. I'm pretty sure when I did Friends of Mineral Town, I didn't find anything either. And that whole episode was filled with the whole Natsume Marvelous saga. But I'm not going to do that a second time, so let's just go through some of the facts I did find. For instance, A Wonderful Life can actually connect to Friends of Mineral Town, and doing so will cause NPCs to begin commenting on stuff in Mineral Town, as well as, quote-unquote, traveling to Mineral Town and bringing new products back to Forget-Me-Not Valley as a result. The game reviewed pretty well upon release. 80% on game rankings for the GameCube version, 79 on Metacritic. The gameplay was the main thing praised, though criticisms were given to a lack of extra content, including the fact that apparently there are no festivals in this game at all. Which is a bit of a bummer, because festivals are the dumbest, funnest side thing you can do in a Harvest Moon game. The PS2 version, though, got less praise than that. 72% on game rankings, 70 on Metacritic. Because while critics did enjoy the addition of an extra bachelorette, as well as the ability to have a daughter, and a mode at the end called Heaven Mode,
Wow.
where the player could just continue playing even after the story ended. It's actually called Heaven Mode, which is really weird to me. This version also came with muddier graphics, ran at a lower frame rate, and had much longer load times. So,
Oops.
you know, the old days of bringing a game to the PS2, which, in case you kids don't know, the PS2 was the weaker console back then. I know that's weird to hear about comparing a Nintendo console and a Sony console now, but that's how it was. Much like Friends of Mineral Town, if you'll remember this, it got a second version later called More Friends of Mineral Town, where the main change was that you played as a woman and not a man. And that was the only way you could do that. Well, fun fact, A Wonderful Life also did that in 2005 with Another Wonderful Life. That likewise, the main difference is that you play as a woman. That's still one of the weirdest parts of this series. Apparently this is a thing that just kept going until, like, roughly when the name changed, as far as I can tell. Oh, it's so weird. Apparently Forget-Me-Not Valley and its citizens, the characters that live there, would return as a setting in 2005's Harvest Moon DS. And as I said, a remake releases today at time of release. I am going to assume that this remake contains all the extra content added in PS2. I cannot find anything saying whether or not that is the case. I would be surprised if it wasn't, but you know, Etrian Odyssey has surprised me already, so who knows? Different company, but I've learned my lesson. Now here's the fun one. The composer for A Wonderful Life is a man by the name of Dai Nakamura. That is now all of the information that I know about this man. I can't find anything. Doesn't have a Moby Games page. Doesn't have a VGMDB page. There is nothing. Looking up his name brings you like 3 other people with similar names, but they're not composers, and they have nothing to do with Harvest Moon. The only evidence that Dai Nakamura exists and did in fact compose the soundtrack of this game is that he is credited on the game's official soundtrack release, according to that release's page on VGMDB. But some places, particularly like videos on YouTube, credit the soundtrack to a Dai Nakajima. So I was like, maybe VGMDB just got the name wrong. And I went and looked up Dai Nakajima. Nope, not that either. That man doesn't exist either. So I don't know. I don't know who this person is. He is an actual ghost. Can't find hide nor hair or blood type. Who knows what his discography is?
That's so weird.
Like, just nothing. Absolutely nothing. But in terms of music in A Wonderful Life, you can also find records in-game, mostly from what I can tell by connecting Friends of Mineral Town with the game. That will allow you to listen to music from the original Harvest Moon, the SNES Harvest Moon 64, Back to Nature, Friends of Mineral Town, DS, and Save the Homeland. And that's it. That's all the information that I was able to find about Harvest Moon, A Wonderful Life. So we should just go ahead and jump into that soundtrack, because honestly, it's surprisingly good. I was pleasantly surprised. And the one that pleasantly surprised me the most, I think, was probably the main theme of the game, which is critical track number 1. This is Wonderful Life. As far as I can tell, this is the title screen, I think. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. But one thing about where the music plays in this game, sometimes YouTube comments will be nice and tell me where that is, but due to the nature of the game being a rather open-ended game, it's kind of difficult to, like, go find a long play to find where the music plays, because I don't know when people are going to go where, if that makes sense. This song really reminds me of Wind Waker. A lot. A little bit of a different instrument set, slightly, but just the general feeling of it has a very Wind Waker-ish vibe to it, which is kind of weird because this game is not about the ocean. But it does have this serene feeling to it as well, which kind of fits a game where the whole thing you're doing is you're farming. You're living a peaceful farm life. And I think this song gets you in the mood for that pretty well.
I hadn't thought of the Wind Waker comparison, but I think that's really apt and appropriate. Nice adding of different instruments here and there. You got the kind of acoustic guitar behind it, and then go with the flute, and then the violin. Again, it's midis for the time, but you know what? For the era, it's about what you'd expect, and it sounds really nice. I could totally picture this as a main theme on the title screen.
Crucial track number 2. This is Song of the Gentle Breeze. So as far as I could tell, this is one of the more popular songs in the game. It's the one I saw talked about the most at the very least. I think it's just an everyday life song. This is one where I'm absolutely not sure where this song plays, but it's one of the earlier songs on the soundtrack. And it's really, really good, honestly. I think it sounds better on actual instruments and not midis, which we'll actually, I believe, hear that later. So don't worry, you'll get a chance to hear what I've heard. But honestly, for a GameCube MIDI of an acoustic guitar, pretty good song. It almost feels like something I'd hear plus vocals in a Katamari game. Almost. It is just shy of that. But that is, for some reason, the first thing that comes to mind. But it's Song of a Gentle Breeze is a very, very apt name for it, because it definitely does feel like standing in front of a field and seeing the wind blow the grass. It
has farm sim written all over it. Not only that, you're right. I think it's a good intro kind of track, like early days as you start to build things up. I think you're totally right. You can definitely hear the limitations in especially like the spacing between the notes. And sometimes it sounds like there are little gaps in like the arrangements and all that. But it's nice to have like the different layers of like, oh, there's some bass in there. There's some accompaniment and then the melody. Whether it's trying to be a harp or an acoustic guitar, hard to say. But you're right. This is kind of what you'd want in a game like this starting out.
Who cares about farm life? Who cares about all that? You're here to get a wife and or husband if you're playing Another Wonderful Life or whatever it's called. And this is a song that plays during some of the heart events, which are, the events you get as you woo said bachelorettes. This is A Nervous Love. Now, I'll be real. When I read the name of this track, this is not what I expected to hear. I don't know if nervous would be what I call this. This sounds like an options screen song in like an N64 game.
I was trying to like place where I heard something like it before, but yeah, that's an interesting option. I saw a translation that said like exciting love. So I don't know if it's just an interesting translation of the adjective.
Maybe. Exciting sounds a little bit more apt, but even then, I don't know if this was what I would expect from that adjective. But still, I really like this song. And I mean, it's important to put here because the heart events are, let's be real, kind of what you play Harvest Moon for.
What? You don't do it to take care of cows?
I mean, I do it to plant turnips, but apparently some people do it to get married. So they're like one of the central parts of the Story of Seasons series. And so highlighting a song that plays during a lot of the process of getting there seemed like a very good idea. It still sounds like something I'd hear in an elevator, which is a little weird, but I guess it could fit. Maybe I just haven't seen it in context. I don't know.
Yeah, not too sure about the chosen tone, but it's very pleasant. And if you're going to pick a critical 5 for a Harvest Moon game, the hard events, I think you're right, are a pretty key element. So yeah, why not associate its theme with that?
And speaking of the Bachelorettes, one of them has a theme that kind of stood out to me. And that's critical track number 4. This is Lumina's theme. As I mentioned earlier, Lumina is a pianist who is the daughter of the local rich family. She lives in a mansion, apparently. And she was added as a bachelorette in the PS2 version. And apparently, if you get to know her, she'll start playing this song on the piano at some point in the story. And you can, like, go interact with her while she's practicing piano, and there are apparently special scenes you can see by doing that. And I mean, you know me. I like piano stuff. I think this is a very nice piano piece to it. I think having the context of being like somebody you could potentially marry, and also just being able to walk into a place and just a character playing a song on a piano and that being the diegetic background music of the area. I don't know. I always kind of find that cool in general. And, I really kind of do hope that Lumina is eligible in the remake because this already puts her high in the listing, being a pianist. We'll see if I actually still agree with that when I have spoken to her.
It's interesting that you include a track that is only available in a certain version of the game. This is something I could have done for my game, and I chose not to. So, there's something to that there. Obviously a solo piano piece. Very nice. Would have loved to hear it performed on a real piano because damn, those midis do be real.
Yep.
But it is really nice. And I do like the context for it. But really pleasant. Really nice. But MIDI, yo.
I'm just honestly looking into this soundtrack. The thing it's done the most is, like, I'm really looking forward to hearing what this soundtrack sounds like redone for the remake.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah.
I don't know how heavily they remake their soundtracks. I didn't listen to the Friends of Mineral Town one, but I would assume they do it in some form.
The instruments have to be better over 20 years.
Yeah, I would hope. But again, Etrian Odyssey has taught me a lot that had remade soundtracks, but still. Anyways, critical track number 5. This one, when I heard it, I can't not include this one because this is the most Harvest Moon song I've ever heard in my entire life. This is Farm Theme, Slow Life. you want a song that sounds like a farm? I present to you this. This is like the song I would picture if somebody was like, imagine a song that plays at a farm. It's this. I like the, I guess you wouldn't really call it fiddle. It's not fast enough. Even though, like, that term doesn't mean anything. It's still just violin. And also, violin MIDI, again, rough.
Of the times.
Of the 2003. But overall, like, this song, this is Harvest Moon. This is what I imagine hearing in a Harvest Moon game more than anything. This is farming, baby.
This is, you've gotten your feet under you, and life goes on, the work goes on, but it sure is the farm. And the spirit of the instrument is nailed perfectly, even if it doesn't sound completely authentic. But I mean, again, you're working with what you got at the time, but yeah, this nails it for sure.
So, for 2 tracks of the cutting room floor, this is actually kind of weird to pick, and I don't know. I don't know if I'm super satisfied with the ones I picked, but also they felt like the best choices at the time. The first one being Weather Report. As far as I can tell, it's exactly what it says on the tin. This is the song that plays when you check the weather report. Fascinating, I know. But it's just got a really nice high energy to it that doesn't feel like it should be for checking a weather report, but whatever. Though apparently the weatherman cannot be trusted according to the description of the YouTube video that I initially found to listen to this song for the first time. So, I guess I'll take that to heart. But yeah, I mostly just like this song's energy, and I mean, the weather is important when you're running a farm, so you don't leave your dog out in a snowstorm, something I accidentally did in Friends of Mineral Town. There was no consequence for it, but boy did I feel bad.
What's the weatherman even good for? You know, if you're going to listen to this song for a few seconds as you're kind of thumbing through and just kind of get the gist, it catches your attention immediately. It's been a couple times now that I've been thinking of Pokemon songs. Lumina's theme kind of made me think about like a surf theme with the piano going, or at least like a Ruby Sapphire water route or something like that. This has like a Pokemon Town vibe to me.
100%.
That's kind of what I think about it, but I like how it really catches your attention in the first few seconds, because that may be all you hear about it.
Potentially. I don't know if it's like a scene you watch when you check the weather, or it's just like, here's a screen with all the weather. Here's what's going to happen. I have no idea.
Even you, so you're probably just like, just show me. All right, yeah, next.
The other track I have on the cutting room floor, I don't know if I picked this just because I think the name is funny, but also it's a good song, so whatever. This is Let's Have Tea or Something. So there's a local tavern in this village called the Blue Bar, apparently. And this is the music that plays there during the day, from what I understand. Apparently at night, this title of the song that plays there at night is something like, if I remember correctly, A Pleasure House for Adults, which is terrifying to see in a rated E game.
Oh.
Not a title I needed from a Harvest Moon game. But I think this one is just fun, mostly because it totally fits its very, very casual title of like, I don't know, man, let's sit down, have some tea. You want tea? Let's talk. It fits that perfectly. I really, really like the really, really laid back vibe that this song brings to the table.
It feels like it's trying to keep the same kind of energy as like the farm theme, slow life theme, but just kind of toned down so that all of the instruments are plucked acoustic guitar. And I kind of like that. It's still has the same boom, bop, doom, bop, the kind of walking, plodding feel, but yeah, just nice and relaxed here.
So what will I never forget about Harvest Moon, A Wonderful Life? A Story of Seasons game with a defined ending sounds kind of neat, and one where you actually raise a kid into an adult sounds kind of neat, honestly. I really hope this remake's good, because I'm very interested in giving it a shot and hearing some of this music having been redone, and just in general, sort of experiencing a second Story of Seasons game. Maybe one that has been better localized, because, again, I keep seeing clips of my Friends of Mineral Town streams, and one of them is, I had a cow named Abunga. I did not name it. Chat named it. And I used an item that was supposed to make her pregnant so we could have another cow. And when I did it, the text box that came up was the name, and then the word is, with no space between the two, and then the word pregant. Just like the Yahoo Answers meme.
God bless.
But in real life. And every time that happened a few times, it was just like, I wonder why Natsume doesn't localize these anymore. So hopefully those are largely gone in these remakes. And I'm kind of just, I don't know. It's mostly the defined beginning and ending thing that I find really fascinating in this kind of game, because I've never played a farming sim with that, ever. So hopefully that remake comes out good.
Yeah, I think if I ever try a Harvest Moon game, this might be the one because of that. I like the idea of some closure.
So, for our transition, we usually like to cover a fan remix. I was between two of them, and they were both kind of ambient guitar covers, both acoustic guitar, more ambient feeling things. It was this, or there was a rearrangement of Song of a Gentle Breeze, but I ended up going with one of the main theme of the game, A Wonderful Life. This is an ambient guitar / synth cover by the YouTuber Nintnt, Nintnt, all one word. And it's very pretty, honestly, and just goes to show you that, this soundtrack sounds very good when translated to real instruments. So enjoy that. We'll be right back.
We're a few days past Sonic's birthday, so like we did last year, let's talk about Sonic. We've had plenty of episodes that talk about Sonic. We've had Sonic 2 all the way back in episode 9, Sonic Adventure 2 in episode 17, Sonic the Hedgehog 2006 in episode 76, we had Mania in episode 106, Sonic R episode 116. Then we had a Sonic episode with Sonic Generations and Sonic Colors in episode 137. 3 and Knuckles got the original Soundchat treatment in episode 159. And then we had our Sonic CD episode where we talked about the Japanese and US versions of the soundtrack in episode 178. And here we are now, 23 is number 1, to talk about Sonic Unleashed. Sonic Unleashed released in North America for Xbox 360, Wii, and PlayStation 2 on November 18th, 2008. A PS2 game in 2008. Europe would have to wait a bit for the game. It would come out 10 days later on November 28th, 2008, and Japan would wait further still for Sonic World Adventure. The Wii version of the game came out on December 18th, 2008 there. Japan would get the 360 version of the game on February 19th, 2009, alongside a PS3 version. And that PS3 version would hit North America a few weeks after the 360 version on December 9th, 2008, Europe on December 19th. And if that weren't confusing enough, there's a mobile version that PAL Regions got on June 4th, 2009. It's strictly a side-scrolling platformer, very reminiscent of the early Sonic games, and a no PC version, seemingly, of Sonic Unleashed, which is a little surprising, but I guess before Sega really doubled down on those. So yes, 3 versions of Sonic Unleashed. For the sake of discussion, let's primarily focus on the 2 different console versions, which were like 90% similar for all intents and purposes. The Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 versions of Sonic Unleashed were developed by Sonic Team over there in Japan. The Wii and PS2 versions were developed by Dimps, and both are published by Sega. Gameloft developed and published the mobile version, for what it's worth. In the console version of Sonic Unleashed, gameplay features 2 distinct styles, with each being played during either daytime or nighttime stages. During the day, it incorporates Sonic's traditional platforming and trademark speed, with a combination of behind-the-back third-person viewpoints and 2D side-scroller platforming. Gameplay seamlessly transitions between these 2 views, so get to the goal quickly. Nighttime stages, on the other hand, see Sonic transform into the Werehog in a werewolf-like transformation. He's slower, he's beefier, he's more of a brawler, he's got these big claws. So the gameplay slows down to accommodate greater platform play, and it involves combat against waves of enemies using the Werehog's brute strength. So you still get to the goal, but you gotta beat up everyone along the way. The story of Sonic Unleashed. In another of his many showdowns with Dr. Eggman, but this time he's in space, Sonic finds himself trapped and robbed of the power of the Chaos Emeralds, as Eggman uses that power to fire an enormous laser and unleash a powerful beast named Dark Gaia from the center of a nearby planet. This planet is presumably Earth, based on several factors. And yeah, firing a big laser at Earth has devastating consequences, including shattering the planet into 7 pieces. Look, that's not how astrophysics work, but okay, we'll take it. The planet is broken up into pieces, sure. In addition, though, this process has the unforeseen side effect of transforming Sonic into a Werehog, a beast form that loses speed but gains greater strength and abilities at night. Eggman ejects Sonic into space, who then lands safely onto the planet below, thanks to a strange green shield. After landing along with the emeralds, Sonic encounters a friendly creature who's kind of red and fox-like, and this creature, of course, suffers from amnesia. Sonic nicknames him Chip. And so Sonic's quest begins. With the help of some old friends, such as Amy and Tails, he attempts to solve the split planet crisis by traveling the world's continents and finding Gaia temples that will restore the emeralds' power in order to return the world and himself to normal. Big questions. Can Sonic save the planet and defeat Dr. Eggman as well as Dark Gaia? And what is it that Chip cannot remember about himself? Joe, here's where I'll ask you, what are our experiences with Sonic Unleashed?
As a kid, I rented the Wii version and played it for roughly 2 hours and then returned it to Blockbuster. I remember not really liking the Werehog levels at all. I remember watching an LP, at least partially, a couple years ago, back when the best friends were still, I can't say a couple years ago with that now, like 7 years ago. They did a Sonic Unleashed playthrough that pointed out how maddening the Werehog battle music is.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like, just absolutely maddening.
I think I also remember seeing Game Grumps. I mean, say what you will about them, but it's just like, gee, I hope there's not a jazz band around the corner.
Like, that's genuinely what it sounds like. It's so weird. And I remember Chip being the worst. That ends my memories of Sonic Unleashed. The only other related memories I have are that in Sonic Generations, Rooftop Run is a really cool level. That's it.
Oh, and it's awesome. It highlights the best part of Sonic Unleashed, not only the gameplay, but the music. Clearly, the best part of this game, because you're right, the Werehog levels are a slog. They're brutal. Catchy jazz music, but boy, is it repetitive. I, too, played the Wii version, though I played it longer than you did. I got to Eggman Land at the end. And I'm glad I'm not the only one when I'm looking up, like, people's thoughts on the game, or like the Eggman Land music track. What does some of the YouTube comments say? Just a very, very difficult level. Maybe it was some of like the Wii specific version, just not the best conveyance at all of how to progress through the level. Just things would come out of nowhere and kill you. And that's kind of what I remember. I hadn't been playing games for the longest time, owning a console. I mean, Wii was my first console I owned on my own. I mean, my brother and I had GameCube before that, but that was a really difficult level, and kind of stopped there. I'm like, I can watch the rest on this YouTube thing here. But yeah, then to find out that the 360 version is a better performing game, looks better, and has an extra level altogether. So that's something. But yeah, definitely good memories with the music. The music sure stands out as a good time. And a lot of memories with Sonic Unleashed, but ultimately ends in frustration. The development of Sonic Unleashed is interesting because there are a lot of factors at play here in the history of the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise. Most of all because the game was coming off of Sonic the Hedgehog 2006. A game that nearly killed the franchise, but they're like, you know what? Nose back to the grindstone. Let's turn this hedgehog puppy around. And so Sonic Team began the development of Sonic Unleashed in 2006, after they began work on the core technology, the Hedgehog engine, in 2005. Development would last 18 months. And because the game was being developed for 2 levels of hardware capability, depending on the target platform, 2 development silos were set up to work on the 2 separate builds of the game. One, of course, for the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 version, utilizing the Hedgehog engine, and one for the Wii and PlayStation 2 version, which instead utilized a modified version of an existing internal Sega engine. So yes, since Sonic is going around Earth, there are different stages that are inspired by real-life places on planet Earth. So there's Apotos, which is inspired by Greece, Spagonia, inspired by Europe, but more like Italy, Mazuri, which is inspired by Northern Africa, or more like Mali. Holoska is not very clear. It's the ice level, so maybe it's Antarctica to cover that continent. There's Chunan, which is inspired by China. Shamar, inspired by the Middle East, but probably more like Jordan. Empire City, inspired by New York City, which is an Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 exclusive area and level. And then there's Adabat, which is inspired by Southeast Asia, kind of more like Indonesia. Finally, Eggman Land. Not a real place on Earth, just chaos, carnival in space. So there's that for the end of the game. Just very, very difficult. But yes, a whole bunch of places around the globe. And it was originally intended to be the third installment of the Sonic Adventure series. So whenever anyone's like, Sonic the Hedgehog, Adventure 3, where's Sonic Adventure 3? Well, they were thinking about making it, and they ended up deciding not to do that because at a very early development stage, they had a working title of Sonic World Adventure with a work in progress logo and everything. But as the team decided to introduce new innovations to separate it from the Sonic Adventure games, a new title was needed. They're like, this is no longer an adventure game. So Sonic Unleashed was decided. And then Japan just kept the Sonic World Adventure name for its release there, making it the first game in the mainline series to be known by a different name in Japan. Narratively, the team wanted Sonic to be the only playable character compared to all of the other different playable characters in the Adventure series. Not only did this hone the gameplay to just Sonic and make it as good as possible, but they also wanted to focus on the interactions he would have with limited guest characters. The team also had to consider, how would we introduce newer gamers who were unfamiliar with Sonic games? How do we introduce them to the series? And so they landed on the concept of the Werehog.
Why would that? What?
I don't know why that's like new players. That's how we'll get them in.
Here's how we'll introduce Sonic to new players. We'll make not Sonic, and they can play that.
We'll make slow, bad original God of War. That's basically what it is. So, of course, they added the Werehog and gave it its own mythology and ideas on how to mix him into the story. The director, Yoshihisa Hashimoto, felt from the outset that there would be both praise and criticism for the Werehog, but hoped that long-term Sonic fans would understand and empathize with the ideas and direction the team had taken. Spoiler!
I've read ahead, they did not.
Yeah, the title Sonic Unleashed was trademarked by Sega on March 12th, 2008. Screenshots of cutscenes, artwork, and a video were leaked 10 days later, and then Sega confirmed the title on April 3rd, 2008, with a small selection of screenshots and an updated video. The game did not review well. There's a Metacritic average of 60 on the Xbox 360 version, 54 on PS3, and the Wii and PS2 version got a 66.
What the hell was wrong with the PS3 version that it reviewed worse than all the others?
That was the time on PlayStation 3 where third parties hadn't figured out the cell processor yet, and so performance was generally worse. I mean, we'd have, Bayonetta the next year where Sega had a terrible time on the PS3. So I think that was generally the gist of it. Reviewers praised certain elements, such as the sense of speed in day stages, and the graphics and the audio that made up the environments were great, but the big criticisms included the Werehog game mechanic, as well as several gameplay and design concepts. The Werehog gameplay was described as involving frustrating platform elements, and combat that was not terribly interesting and boring, with awkward action sequences overall. Basically, overall, this was not it when it came to reinvigorating the series after Sonic 06. And yet, it was still commercially successful, selling 2.45 million units. Did it win any awards? Certainly not at the big award shows, though I guess it was nominated for Best Graphics Technology for the Wii by IGN in its 2008 Video Game Awards. I guess it did look pretty impressive on the Wii. I'll give it that, especially when you compare to the 360 and PS3 versions, and yeah, those do look better, but okay, the Wii held its own, though you got that 30 FPS gameplay. Not that 360 and PS3 hit 60 all the time, but there is the difference there. I forgot about this in Sonic the Hedgehog's history and how it moved forward. Sonic Unleashed was delisted from retailers in 2010, following Sega's decision to remove all Sonic games with below average Metacritic scores from sale.
I forgot about that.
Remember when Sonic 4 was coming out and they're like, oh, we don't want bad games to show up in the console store search engines, so let's just delist bad Sonic games. Well, despite this, the PlayStation 3 version was relisted in April 2014, and it was added to PlayStation Now in March 2017. The Xbox 360 version was relisted and made backward compatible for Xbox One in November 2018. It even got a frame rate boost update for its Xbox version in 2021, so you get that full 60 frames per second capped performance. So maybe it actually runs well this time. I guess the more powerful consoles also had DLC packs that had extra stages for each area. But overall, the legacy of Sonic Unleashed is that the Hedgehog engine would later be refined for use for later games in the franchise, such as Sonic Generations in 2011 and Sonic Forces in 2017. Two middling and varying degrees of success there. But overall, it's the daytime gameplay style of Unleashed was reused and expanded upon to become the defining gameplay of the franchise for the following decade. Until Frontiers flipped it upon its head and changed things up, but for modern 3D Sonic, it was Unleashed that kind of started things. The composer that we'll talk about for Sonic Unleashed, his name is Takahito Eguchi. And Takahito Eguchi was born on August 28, 1971, in Nagasaki, Japan. He became interested in music at the age of 6 when he heard the sound of a neighbor's piano. And his parents didn't come from a musical environment. His dad wanted to push him into athletics, so they eventually agreed to let him take piano lessons throughout his adolescence. He developed an interest in composition after being inspired by a variety of jazz, electronic, modernist, and pop musicians. He then went on to study professionally at the Tokyo Conservatoire Shobi, where he cultivated his personality and developed versatility in his music. Here, he met Noriko Matsueda, initially a friendly and impressive rival, but she became his long-term composing partner and eventually his wife, and they married in 2009. After graduation from school, he produced numerous musical compositions, joined a band as a keyboardist, and even worked as a software designer. But then he helped Matsueda with arrangements on some of her early game music projects for Square, like Front Mission and Racing Lagoon. After going freelance around 2003-2004, he joined the sound production company Rebirth Music, that was in 2006, though he started working with Sega on different game projects in 2007. And you can follow Takahito Eguchi on Twitter at Takachoku. Takahito Eguchi's discography includes games like The Bouncer, Final Fantasy X-2, which he co-composed with Matsueda. He was an arranger on Sonic the Hedgehog 2006. He composed music for Sonic Unleashed. He performed electric piano on Sonic Colors. He composed Rhythm Thief and the Emperor's Treasure. And he was an arranger on Sonic Lost World. But most recently, he's composed for Sonic Forces and Sonic Frontiers. He also worked on a couple anime projects, including composing music for DN Angel and Trinity Blood. The music of Sonic Unleashed was primarily composed by Tomoya Otani. He is also the music director for the game. This continues his prominent role in the Sonic franchise. He worked on Sonic 06 primarily, And we covered Tomoya Otani for his work on Sonic 06 in episode 76 of Original Soundchat. There is additional work by, I believe, 5 other composers, and they roughly worked on different things. Of course, it goes beyond that, but I try to kind of capture the essence of what else they did. So Takahito Eguchi worked on cutscenes, Fumie Kumatani worked on the area themes, Hideaki Kobayashi worked on boss battles, Kenichi Tokoi worked on night stages, and we talked about his work in episode 137 for his work on Sonic Colors, and Mariko Nanba composed the ending vocal theme for the game. There's an orchestral theme that is performed by the Tokyo Philharmonic Orchestra, and that's a big theme throughout the game for sure. But yes, when you're talking about a globe-trotting adventure and going to different continents, you'll need themes for the different continents, and these are all developed with the culture of each region in mind. So each stage features instruments that are synonymous to the real-world area that the levels are based on. So for example, bamboo flute is used for Matsuri, accordion for Spagonia, the erhu for Chunan, the gamelan for Adabat, etc. Of course, Eggman Land is the exception here, which uses synthesizers to emulate the industrial theme. It took the team 9 months to complete work on the music, which is all featured on the OST release titled Sonic World Adventure Original Soundtrack, Planetary Pieces. And this is the first Sonic game from the main console series since Sonic Adventure to not have Crush 40 perform the main theme song. But we'll get to that shortly. Because let's talk about the 5 critical tracks for Sonic Unleashed. And let's start with that big orchestral theme. This is, of course, The World Adventure. It's nice that only a handful of years later from Harvest Moon: A Wonderful Life, we now have consoles that can stream audio files and thus get an orchestral recording and make it sound so big and impressive because Sonic is going around the world. This theme is composed by Tomoya Otani, it's arranged by Takahito Eguchi, and it is performed by the Tokyo Philharmonic Orchestra. It's the title screen for the game, so you're going to hear it a lot there, but also it gets interpreted into like the level clear stage, and depending on how well you do, it sounds better. If you get an E, it sounds bad and flat. So yeah, you're going to hear this ba 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 sort of leitmotif a lot, all with the orchestral version and just interpreted in different ways. But yeah, I think this is a theme I find synonymous with the game, and when you play it, you definitely can't escape it.
I don't think this song fits, this style of song for a main theme fits Sonic.
Yeah, I feel like Sonic music uses different instruments for sure, and we'll get to that for sure, but I think this is just their grand vision for going around the world.
Like, it kind of, ironically enough, feels like it's also, oh crap, did you hear the Mario Galaxy soundtrack?
Yes.
Can we do that?
Scramble.
Yeah, that's basically all I can hear. It's not a bad piece, it does not sound like Sonic to me at all.
I get that for sure. It's nice to hear it here, but yeah, not what you necessarily always associate with Sonic. Sonic's got to have a pretty killer vocal theme, though. And so let's get to that in critical track number 2. But it's not by Crush 40. Who could it be? Critical track number 2 for Sonic Unleashed is, of course, Endless Possibility.
And it's right there for me. The possibilities are never ending. I see it, and now it's all
let's call it the main opening theme, if you will. It's the big vocal theme of the game. Tomoya Ohtani made the point that, like, we only have 2 vocal themes in our game. It's the opening and the credits theme. Credits theme is nothing really to write home about, in my opinion, but this one is definitely iconic and associated with this game. It is performed by Jared Reddick of Bowling for Soup. Yeah, a band that was well known at the time. And then Jared Reddick became the voice of Chuck E. Cheese. So that happened in the years following.
What?
Yeah. Dude became the voice of Chuck E. Cheese, especially when he became that, like, more realistic looking CGI mouse.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so that all happened. Anyway, this song is undeniable for this game. Has to be here in the Critical 5. When you have the final boss in these Sonic games, it uses the melody from this theme as it does. That's kind of the thing that these Sonic games do. And I didn't get that far, so it doesn't stand out as much for me, but Endless Possibility, the vocal theme, hits for me for sure. Although it has a weird rap breakdown in a verse in the middle of the song. It's like, okay, all right, chill out a little bit. This is composed by Tomoya Ohtani, and it slaps, so it's here.
But what is more Sonic than a part of his theme being something that makes you say, all right, y'all are trying a little too hard to be hip and cool with the kids. That's the most Sonic thing there could ever be. This song is Sonic. This is what I picture when I think about, like, main themes for a Sonic game. This is more along the lines of what I expect to hear. I don't think I knew that it was the Bowling for Soup guy. I definitely didn't know it was Chuck E. Cheese. But I guess I could hear it.
You hear it.
Crush 40 is better.
Yeah, like, what happened? I feel like there wasn't enough information on, like, why are we moving away from Jun Sonoe and Crush 40 especially when they were thinking maybe it's going to be Sonic Adventure 3. I don't know. Weird stuff, man. Weird stuff. But hey, it's a track that had to be here. Tracks that also have to be here. Let's get to number 3 on their Critical 5. This has a good little bounce to it. This is Windmill Isle Day. As you learn how to play this new style of Sonic Day stage, Windmill Isle is the first such level, and so it's the Apotos Day stage music composed by Tomoya Ohtani. And man, just such a good little bounce right from the get-go as Sonic's kind of limbering up and ready to run through the white stoned Grease-inspired levels. And yeah, just a theme that, again, really resonates with me, hits me right in the nostalgia. A good theme, especially if you learn how to do like the shift dashing with your bumper buttons and try to navigate split-second decisions there for navigating these 3D levels. Just a really good theme with kind of the acoustic guitar setting the tone and then the percussion coming in and really giving you the energy and speed. And then the violin with the melody comes in like that. Just stop. It's so good and really is like a light breath of fresh air.
Yeah, this song is fantastic. It's definitely the percussion for me the most, but usually I would find it kind of weird that because the violin's a little bit EQ'd in a bit of an odd way that makes it slightly muffled. I think they took out some of the low end just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds really cool. It fits in the piece perfectly. And I think I remember hearing this song in the game now that I'm hearing it. So memorable at the very least.
Yeah, if you only played the couple hours, I'm sure you heard it. And it's good that it's memorable enough to hit for you. But obviously, where there's day, there's night. And of course, let's hear that jazz band coming in. Number 4 on the Critical 5 for Sonic Unleashed is Werehog Battle Theme. Look, I think the piece is really cool. I like jazz. I like jazz bands. I like all the elements involved here. One, it does not fit a beefy werehog clobbering enemies and doing that, but also for how often you hear it. It just kills the piece, unfortunately, in a bad way. Where you just hear ba-da, ba-da, like stop. And it's like always at these kind of jump scary like moments or like, oh, that looks like an arena. I wonder what music, ba-da, ba-da. Yeah, and like, granted, great piece. Just don't need to hear it as often as we do. They do have different stems and variations to try to mix it up. But the point is, the feeling is always there and tries to come in with such bombast when it is not needed, especially with the frequency.
Yeah, the frequency is what does it. It's like the fact that it starts over every time. You guys should have just used a dynamic soundtrack that just, like, there's a reason why action games use those. This is why I cannot hear the intro to the song without feeling like I'm losing my mind. It would be a fine song were it removed from the context that it exists in, but unfortunately, it is not. That's where it lives.
And for how often you hear it, it had to be a Critical 5 piece for sure. I wonder if there are people listening out there who are like, I kind of like it. And you just have to trust us. In the context of the game, it's too much. It's too much.
Imagine hearing that intro every few minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. Number 5, though, the best track from Sonic Unleashed will round out our Critical 5. And of course, this is Rooftop Run Day. Forgot to mention that with that Werehog battle theme, since it sounded so very different, you're right, it was composed by different people. The nighttime battle music was composed by Kenichi Tokoi and Masahiro Kobayashi. When it comes to Rooftop Run Day, we're back on the Tomoya Otani bandwagon. And this is the day stage theme for Spagonia, and it's the best theme. When you talk about Sonic Unleashed being carried forward into generations, as you mentioned, it was this Rooftop Run stage with an updated version of the theme, which, you could take it or leave it. Like, it didn't change too much, and you could argue like which one you like more, but it really says something that the quality is right here. You get more of the violin with the melody, but it's really that Sonic energy behind it that you really get used to. It's the best track on the soundtrack. They recognize that far and away. They carry it forward, and Rooftop Run is the bee's knees, man.
I like the Generations version better. I think the main difference is they de-emphasize the guitar. I don't think they remove it, but it's much less in front, if that makes sense. And the violins take up more of the front facing spot. in the piece. But yeah, no, the original is still goddamn good. This song is so good. It deserved a better game.
It really did. It really did. And it's weird that, like, it's the second stage. Why is it wrapping up the Critical 5? Oh, there's a lot of great music here, but these are the 5, I think, when it comes to a definitive, what are the critical pieces in Sonic Unleashed? It's these. It's these.
What are the songs people think about when they think about Sonic Unleashed? It's these 5.
Yeah. So I've got a couple on the cutting room floor that I think a mix of I like, and I think it shows the variety. So tracks on the cutting room floor. The first one from me, let's get a nighttime stage theme in here. And I think I like Arid Sands Night. There were a couple of night themes that stood out to me, but this is the one like I like this one the most. Oh yeah, I put a pin in this one for sure. Of course, it is composed by Kenichi Tokoi, and it is the night stage theme for Shamar. So if you're wondering about those Middle Eastern sort of influences, there you go. Also keeps the jazz up a little bit, obviously, with the different instrumentation there. And then, of course, it gets interrupted with da-da-da-da, but that's for a whole other thing. Look, this one's really cool. You kind of get the darker, chiller vibes with the platforming and just the slower pace of the night stages. And I think that's something that kind of carries throughout all of them. But the still jazzy vibe I like a lot with this one.
All it needs is rap lyrics, and it's a Sonic Adventure 2 Knuckles theme.
Yeah.
Knuckles stage theme.
Come on, Sega, do it up.
That's literally all I can think of. That, or it's just a Rouge level theme from Sonic Adventure 2. That's the first thing that comes to mind. It would fit very well there.
It sure would. It sure would. Wow. I think this theme for Cutting Room Floor track number 2, though, fits in a whole other context entirely. And this one is called Cool Edge Day. I find the Holoska music to be pretty memorable, and so this one is composed by Tomoya Otani. It is the day stage for Holoska, and while it isn't clear exactly where it is, it's trying to be ice cap. It's the ice level. We'll do a little bit of snowboarding and running around in an ice world there. Lots of blues going on as far as the color palette. And so you got kind of the chill instruments kind of coming through. I feel like that's where like the high synths kind of come through. It's almost like bell-like, synth-like. Not really, but like it gives a kind of brightness to it. Although the backing track is like J-rock as it gets, especially when the piece starts, not necessarily the clip, but this the bass that comes through reminds me a lot of Haruka Kanata, like that second Naruto opening. So like it just big J-rock vibes overall. Yeah, definitely a track that stood out. And I'm like, it doesn't fit Critical 5, but I'll stick it on Cutting Room Floor.
I don't think I've ever heard this song. J-rock is a good way to describe that. I can't believe it's called Cool Edge. That is, again, the most Sonic thing you could possibly name.
And Shadow the Hedgehog isn't even in this game.
It's not even in the game. It's so good. Yeah, no, this is a good song. I don't think I had ever heard it. It does not scream ice level to me, but it's a good song nonetheless.
What will I never forget about Sonic Unleashed? The frustration of stopping at Eggman Land. But honestly, really good soundtrack. Set the foundation for modern Sonic platforming going forward, especially with those day stages Bada bada with the Knight and Werehog and just terrible, terrible stuff there. I wouldn't have guessed that like the review scores were that low. Like I enjoyed my time with Sonic Unleashed leading up to Eggman Land.
Yeah, I knew it was a disliked game. I didn't know it was critically that disliked.
Yeah, and then still it sold well enough to obviously keep the franchise going. So, yeah, what could have been Adventure 3? World Adventure? Sonic sure went around the world.
Everybody that keeps asking for Sonic Adventure 3, this is what happens when they start to make it. So just remember that.
Yeah, and they still ask for it to this day, even when Sonic Superstars come out. So, Sonic Origins Plus is out now. Happy birthday, Sonic. You also got a DLC update to Frontiers, so there's that. I just thought, Unleashed is a good soundtrack. Worth bringing to the show, for sure. And we kind of put a bow on it to talk about games that are much better in the daytime than they are with their gameplay at night. Though Harvest Moon, A Wonderful Life doesn't really have that. You're sleeping, but woof that Werehog and Sonic Unleashed. Not good, but yes, fun, good soundtracks nonetheless. And that will do it for us this week on Original Soundchat. You can find me on Twitter at PeteSpeakEasy. Joe is over at StringPixel. The video version of the show is on the Rhymes with Asia YouTube channel, but it's that MP3 podcast version that you want to listen to, and that's over on Anonymous Dinosaur at anondino.squarespace.com. It's where Joe's other podcast, Smasher Pieces, is hosted, and you can find Smasher Pieces and Original Soundchat wherever you get your podcasts, on catchers all around the globe, from Apple Podcasts to Google Podcasts, even on Spotify, where we have a feed of podcast episodes, but we also have a big video game music playlist. We talk about a track on the show, and it's on Spotify. It gets added to that monster playlist. Joe, what's being added this week?
As far as I can find, still, none of the Story of Seasons games are on Spotify whatsoever. But Sonic soundtracks pretty much across the board are, so Sonic Unleashed is on there. So that one.
Good stuff. When you're done listening, you can find the show on social media at Soundchat OST. Leave some feedback for us. How are we doing with these episodes? What songs did we miss? How would you arrange a Critical 5? And give us some suggestions for games to cover in the future, as we're starting to have a little bit of a clearer picture of our back half of 2023 on our schedule outline. All right, Joe, who are we talking about next week?
There's a high chance I abort this one, but I'm going to try and talk about Kenneth W. Arnold.
I don't know how I'll do this one, but I'll talk about Tomohiro Nakatsuchi. All right, to play us out, let's talk about a fan cover, fan remix. Found The Game Boys on YouTube. And, I could have picked like Rooftop Run, obviously the best song. Did someone do an Endless Possibility cover? No? Well, these boys here, the Game Boys, did an acoustic guitar cover of Windmill Isle Day, so getting that catchy, bouncy Apatos Day stage in there. Just a really nice, pleasant cover, and I really enjoyed listening to it, so I hope you will too. Thanks so much for listening this week on Original Soundchat. We'll see you next time. Take care.